And welcome into Gator Bytes on the 1010XL Podcast Network, also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Today's Gator Podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialist. They're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's, along with the good folks at Southeast Orthopedic Specialist. Certainly want to thank everyone at George Moore Chevrolet. If you're in the market for a vehicle, if you're in the market for tune-ups, oil changes, you name it, the good folks at George Moore Chevrolet can take good care of you. They've been around forever. Why have they been around forever? Well, they're very, very good at their job. And that's why we love having George Moore part of Gator Bytes as well. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. That is Graham Marsh. And we are 2 weeks away from Florida football. It's the first time we've been with you in a while. Let me welcome in Graham Marsh. Graham, how have your last, month and a half, 2 months been?
Good morning, sir. It's been good. I don't know if you're in the same boat as I am when it comes to, end of summer, start of football type of window. This is the time of year, and this dating back to the last maybe 2 weeks or so, where I start to really miss games that count being played.
Jonesing for it a little bit?
Yeah, so for me, don't get me wrong, I like training camp, and it's nice to have the Jaguars up here in Jacksonville and the Gators down in Gainesville back on the field and doing things and whatnot. And it's a really important time of the year for them. But after about a week of them being on the field, I get the itch to want them to play somebody else, hit somebody else, and play some games that matter and games that count.
No, I don't disagree, although with Jaguar training camp, as you said, we're based in Jacksonville. I've been pretty slammed with that. But college football, Florida plays 2 weeks from tomorrow. We're recording this on Friday the 16th. Florida State kicks off the season a week from tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Dublin, Ireland against Georgia Tech. This is the last Saturday, August 17th, that we're going to have without any sort of college football. Till late January, I guess. The national champion is crowned on January 20th. Let's start right there. Biggest season of college football ever, most anticipated ever, with the 12-team playoff, all the realignment, everything going into it. It's certainly going to look a lot different than it has been in years past, and I think there's an argument, Graham, that this is the biggest year of college football that we're ever going to see.
You're the producer of your show and myself have a podcast, as you all know, the award-winning Denmark and Marsh, and we have talked about this multiple times this offseason.
Big fan of Dylan Denmark.
Oh, yeah. We've talked about this offseason, and Dylan was kind of leading the charge in the conversation of that when we talked about it a couple months ago, that he and I had never really thought about it that way until he brought it up a couple months ago, and he was saying the same thing. He's like, this is going to be the biggest, most anticipated college football season probably ever, and I think he and you are right, and, everyone has their opinion on conference realignment, conference expansion,
NIL, transfer portal. It's a different world.
Everyone has their opinions on all kinds of things, and particularly with college and with conference realignment. Does it make any sense for UCLA and USC to be in the Big Ten geographically? No, and we can debate that till the cows come home. But what we can't debate is that these matchups all season are going to be incredible.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we can't debate. Whether you like conference realignment or not, you're going to be, if you're a fan of college football, you're going to be on your couch Saturday tuned into these games.
There's no doubt about that. And look, with the Gator schedule, it's been well documented for the last 6 months this offseason. I'm 40 years old. You are considerably younger than me. What are you now?
26.
26. My goodness gracious. 26 years old. So clearly in your lifetime, my lifetime as well, I can't ever remember on paper a Florida schedule that's this daunting. Now, I think there's two variants to this schedule. I think you got the last five, which is ridiculously hard.
The last five is the hardest stretch, I would argue, in the history of the sport.
Yes, because you got 5 teams that are all preseason top 15, I believe, with Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida State. It's incredible. The first 7, I think, is where the season will unfold, and maybe Billy Napier's future will be determined. Because to me, the first 7, I think the hardest putt you have is Tennessee.
Yeah.
I've said all offseason, Big Orange and the Volunteer Navy and everybody in Knoxville, they are going to be ready for the Gators coming in there after what Florida did last year. Having said that, the other 6, there's a lot of good-looking logos on that schedule, and we've talked about that. The 4 home games, Miami, Texas A&M, Kentucky, UCF. If Florida is...
Don't leave out the mighty Samford Bulldogs.
But you're going to beat Samford and Mississippi State. I'm going to put to the side because it's on the road, but you should beat them as well. But those first 4 home games in the first 6, again, the Hurricanes, the Aggies, the Wildcats, and UCF. If Florida is where they should be 3 years into Billy Napier, absolute minimum you should go 3-1. I'm sorry, you should beat UCF. If you don't beat UCF and Gainesville, that's a problem. Kentucky's beat you 3 years in a row. If you don't get motivated for that in Gainesville, that's a problem.
We shouldn't have to explain to anybody, and I don't think we need to. I think everybody gets it, why you can't lose. Because Billy Napier has lost to Kentucky 2 years in a row.
Yes.
His last it extends to last year.
And Kentucky embarrassed them last year.
So if they lose this year, it'd be 3 years in a row for him. I don't think we have to explain to anybody why if you lose to Kentucky 3 years in a row as Florida's head coach, you're not going to survive.
No, agreed. And the other 2, we're going to talk a lot about Miami because that's the first one. That's 2 weeks away. And that's, a big game in the state, obviously, recruiting and everything that goes with that. Gigantic game for Mario Cristobal as well. But I got to tell you, Graham, to me, it's Texas A&M, and I'll tell you why. That will be game 3 for Mike Elko and his first SEC game. I believe it's his first road game, too, as the year 1 Texas A&M coach. If in game 3 for Mike Elko, he brings his Aggies to Gainesville and beats Billy Napier, who's in year number 3, man, that is a bad look for the Gators. Miami, I think, is a tougher game. If you lose to Miami, you absolutely have to beat A&M. If you lose to both of them, that's not going to bode well.
So I think most people that have looked through and documented Florida's schedule, and not just the fact that it's hard. We all know it's hard. That's been talked at nauseum. But exactly what you just said, the fact that you kind of have to look at it in 2 different pockets. Like you just said, you have the first half of the schedule, which is the more manageable part in the games that you arguably should win a decent amount of, and Billy Napier has to win. Like it's not really it's not optional.
I mean, I think at absolute minimum you got to be 5-2.
Right. So the biggest question becomes, when they kick off against Georgia and Jacksonville, what is their record going to be when that game before that game starts? What will Florida's record be? And you said 5-2,
minimum 5-2
is what they need to be. I would agree. I think there's a war. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a not pie in the sky insane world where they could be 6-1 if some things go that. Now it'd be really impressive. I'm not saying it's like
if they're 6-1 in the first 7, Billy Napier will have consideration for Coach of the Year.
I agree.
Through 7 games,
but it's possible.
It is possible.
Is the point?
Yeah.
And I think at worst, to have some optimism in the fan base by the time they play Georgia, the worst I think they could be is 4-3.
See, if you're 4-3, here's the problem, because I think we're both counting the Tennessee game as a loss in Knoxville. That means that you either lose a road game to Mississippi State, who's thought to be the worst team in the conference, or you lose 2 home games. And that's why I'm saying the Gators need to feast on those home games. And obviously, Miami, and we'll get more into that certainly next week and absolutely the week after leading into the game. Who can justify to their fan base a loss more? Who can explain it away better? Napier or Cristobal? Because, we're talking from the Billy Napier point of view. Man, I know a lot of Miami people, all right?
Yeah.
They are expecting to go into Gainesville and win that game. And Mario Cristobal, by the way, has one more win than Billy Napier in 2 years. I think Napier's 11-14. I think Cristobal's 12-13.
And Mario Cristobal has played a far easier schedule and a far easier conference.
Cristobal and Napier are basically the same guy 2 years into their new gig.
Yeah.
If Florida beats Miami, Mario Cristobal is going to have a hard time explaining that Miami fan base.
So Dylan and I debated this a couple weeks ago as well. I think it's easier for Mario to explain it away, and here's why. First, the game is in Gainesville. That's the first part. He's got a new quarterback this year. Florida's got a returning quarterback.
He's got Cam Ward.
I understand. I know it's the most. I know that he was the most highly cut, but it's still a first-year guy. We have no idea what that offense is going to look like yet. Florida, all of the important powers that be on offense are back again. So there's no excuses. Ricky
Pearsall and Trevor Etienne aren't.
I mean in terms of quarterback play call. I mean that's what I mean.
That's fair.
But the other reason is more so. I'm thinking less about when they walk off the field after the game, and I'm thinking more so about a month later. Miami's got a lot of easy games where they can make up for it, and they can make their schedule look a lot better a month after that, and they can be 4-1, 5-1, even if they lose to the Gators.
Miami's schedule is very, very easy. Yes.
Versus, we just talked about it. Florida loses that game, then they'll have Samford the next week, but then what if A&M gets you? What if Mississippi State gets you? What if Kentucky gets you? You see it? Their schedule can snowball badly fast. It's just the fact that I think maybe after the game when they walk off the field, it's easier for Napier to explain. But just in terms of being able to make up for it, Mario Cristobal has an easier path to do that.
Gator Bytes podcast. Thank you to Southeast Orthopedic Specialists and George Moore Chevrolet for bringing it to you every week. Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. Go to se-ortho.com for any orthopedic injury or concern. You can also check out the good Dr. Kevin Murphy here on 1010XL Thursday mornings with Jeff and Dan on the drill. And we always tell them, Graham, the good folks at George Moore Chevrolet.
Yeah, go buy yourself a car. If you're in the market for a car, and even if you're not, take your car to George Moore Chevrolet to get maintenance, to get work done, whatever you need. They're the people for you. Like we said, they've been around for forever for a reason because they do the job the right way, but a good price.
I'll tell you this, too, about the Gator schedule and Billy Napier and the whole roster. And it should be like this entering year 3. This is on paper the best team Billy Napier has had.
Oh, yeah.
He did very well in the portal. He's doing well in the recruiting trail, all things considering. He's got Graham Mertz back for year number 2, as you mentioned. So I have no doubt that this is the best team coming into the year that Billy Napier has had. Again, that's relative because of the schedule. So the team is going to be better, in my opinion, but will the results merit that out on the field as far as the win-loss record?
And is it going to matter that they have better players top to bottom? Because the first year of Billy Napier, I would argue that the main reason that they struggled in a lot of games is because they just didn't have good enough players top to bottom.
Yeah.
But the first year, this is probably the most concerning part of the Napier tenure so far, in my opinion. The first year, they had their issues, obviously. But I didn't go through the first season, correct me if I'm wrong here, I didn't go through 2022 of Billy Napier thinking, man, they've got operational issues in terms of getting the ball snapped, illegal procedure penalties, way too many, 12 men on the field on field goal. Those types of things didn't seem to be a huge burden.
Last year was worse in that regard than the first year.
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
That those types of things need to get better in year 2, not worse. So my concern is it going to get even worse, or will it just not improve enough? Because yes, Florida's better on paper. Yes, the roster's better. But they're not so much better that there's this huge margin for error to do stupid stuff like that. Well, I'll tell you the quickest way because this is going to be a constant debate until it's settled, because he gets fired or proves himself with Billy Napier of if he's going to keep his job. The quickest way for him to lose his job this year is not necessarily winning and losing the games, but it's how does it look? Man, have some more illegal procedure penalties. Have some more false starts. Have some more can't get the ball snapped. There's 2 seconds left on the play clock, and Graham Mertz is clapping his hands like crazy and can't get the ball snapped. That kind of stuff happens. He might not be the coach by the end of the season.
No, I agree. But Napier is known, and here's the thing, too. Napier is known as kind of an offensive guy, right?
Yeah.
And offensively, in Florida wasn't half bad last year.
They weren't. They scored points. That's fair.
The defense was horrible. I mean, I've been watching Florida football for really as long as I can remember, 34 years. Billy Spurrier's first year in 90 is as far back as I go, even the 4-8 teams, I don't know if I've ever seen a worse defensive performance than Kentucky or LSU last year. They legitimately could not tackle anybody in Lexington or in Baton Rouge. It was absolutely, utterly embarrassing. So, do you give Napier credit? And I think the offense is going to be fine. I think the offense is going to score some points, and we'll get to Montrell Johnson's injury in a moment here. The defense has to be drastically better than it was a year ago.
And so I was looking back through it before we came on today at just like, just kind of picking out different performances throughout Billy Napier's tenure and the good ones, the bad ones, the in-between, all that. I found 4 games, in my opinion, over the last 2 seasons that were just completely and utterly unacceptable performances. And I think if they have so much as one of those types of performances this season, then the Billy Napier era is going to be over, in my opinion. And those games are the Vanderbilt game first year. You lose Vanderbilt. That's all I got to explain.
The one lasting memory I have from that, and look, I think Anthony Richardson's going to be fine in the NFL. The Hail Mary at the end of the game.
Most insane thing I've ever seen.
He threw it 10 rows into the stands. The game is legit over unless you score a touchdown, and he airmails it out of the stadium.
They played in Vanderbilt Stadium. He threw it to Nissan Stadium.
It's unreal.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
That game, don't need to say anything else. They lose to Vanderbilt. That's all I got to say. You can't lose to Vanderbilt ever. Ever. And then the other 3 games all came this past year. The Kentucky game was one of them. Ray Davis looked like Walter Payton in that game.
Ray Davis is a good player, but
he's a good player.
Yeah.
But so that gets to my point. I didn't count LSU because A, the offense was lights out that game.
Yeah.
And B, yes, Jaden Daniels just destroyed them.
They couldn't tackle anybody.
They couldn't. The reason I'm not counting this, and there's no argument to count it in this category, at least Jaden Daniels went off and won the Heisman. Ray Davis is a good player. He wasn't Bijan Robinson.
Yeah.
He wasn't a top 10 pick. He's not Jahmyr Gibbs. He's not a top 10 pick in the draft. This guy's like a good, above average SEC back that literally looked like prime Derrick Henry. So that was game 2. That was completely unacceptable. Arkansas game, because Arkansas was horrendous and the way they finished was unacceptable.
You know what's funny about that? If the field goal was made, we don't look at that game near as much. I mean, but they missed the field goal.
Correct.
And because the field goal got missed, here we are.
Yeah, 100%. And there's one more game I'm trying to remember.
Was it Utah?
No, not Utah.
Utah was functionally a mess, too, because 2 guys with the same jersey on the field, that sort of stuff.
It was. There was another game last year. Why am I forgetting it?
We had a lot of choices last year.
Yeah, I do.
You lose to a backup quarterback in Florida State?
It was Missouri. It was the Missouri game.
Oh, yeah.
Missouri was good, and
again, 4th down, right? If you make the kick against Arkansas and you stop 4th down, the season looks a lot different.
1,000%. But that 4th down was one of the most unacceptable plays in the history of the Florida football program.
Now, that goes back to defense. Napier is known as kind of an offensive guy. So you give him grief, I guess, about the guys that he's hired, and we'll see. I mean, obviously, a lot of young guys on that staff that'll have to grow, and I think they learned a lot last year. But do you crush Napier for that? Because offensively, they were good in spurts last year.
I do, because he's the head coach, and he's not the OC. He's the head coach. He hires everyone in charge of the defense. So, yeah, everything in that program falls back on him. And I've always felt this way because, there's always that debate of, certain things happening. Oh, is that on this person? Is that on the coach? What, yada, yada, yada. To me, when there's bigger, more general issue, like if one guy commits like a false start in a game, like that's the player's fault, like obviously. But when it's like a more general concept of the defense in general was horrendous, well, Billy Napier hired every last member of that staff, did he not?
I mean, I think Austin Armstrong is going to grow and he's going to be better. The defense was horrendous last year, which is why they went out and got Roberts from Auburn to come in and basically help him and try to turn it around.
And I like the Roberts hire, and I think that's going to help out, and I agree with you. But let me break down a quick sentence that you just said that I think is kind of a big deal here. I think Austin Armstrong is going to grow. I agree. And I've heard that about Billy Napier before, too. I think Billy Napier's going to grow as an SEC. Florida's not a job where you grow, man.
That's fair. And look, and you can blame Napier for that. But the reason I say that, I mean, Armstrong's 9 years younger than me. He's
I know.
31 years old. I mean, it's wild. Or is he 30? He might still be 30. I'm not sure he's turned 31 yet or not. It's wild how young he is. But look, Austin Armstrong has this year to prove himself. Because if Napier's blown out, obviously Armstrong's going with him. So everybody down there is on the hot seat. But I do like some of the young defensive linemen. I really do. I like TJ Searcy a lot. LJ McCray, that freshman from Daytona Beach, Mainland, that dude's a full-blown man.
Knock on wood, barring injury or anything like that, he is going to be playing on Sundays in 3 years.
I mean, I like Jason Marshall. I like there's Jordan Castile at safety. And they got some guys.
Asa Turner this year.
Yeah, a lot of the transfers. You just got to tackle, man. The tackling last year was horrendous.
The biggest reason for optimism, in my opinion, on the defensive side this year as opposed to last year is at least this year, between some guys they got in the portal that have played some football and just the fact that the guys that did play last year are a year older, a year wiser this year. Last year, they were playing children out there, man.
Yeah.
They were playing kids. And this year, Jordan Castell's back. Last year, he started basically, I think started every game last year as a true freshman.
As a true freshman, yeah.
I mean, he was a child back, and he played well. He did a good job. But you get him back with a full year of experience under his belt, an extra offseason, he should be that much better. Asa Turner has played, not in Gainesville, but he's played a ton of college football, and he's played college football with Will Harris as his position coach, who's now in Gainesville, obviously.
The Penn defensive tackle, the corner from Oregon. Look, it was Napier's best year in the portal.
Joey Slackman, Bridges. The number one thing that they did in the portal was they got older in a good way.
And they got a couple offensive tackles, some wide receivers on offense. No, I like what they did in the portal. Quickly, Montrell Johnson. We don't know his status for Miami. We're still 2 weeks out.
We're pretty sure he's not going to play is the general thinking.
General thinking, but we don't know that yet at the time you and I are talking about this. That's a huge, huge deal, right? Now, they say it's not serious, so this is not like a season-long thing. I mean, I don't know if you rush him back knowing how daunting the schedule is. You want him to be – if he doesn't play Miami, that would give him basically 2 extra weeks. You're not going to play him at Samford to see if he can get back for A&M. But regardless of that, I mean, if he misses Miami, it's a huge, huge deal. But then you get back to the young guys. You get back to Jaden Baugh, a true freshman. You get back to Treyon Webb, who's a sophomore. Those guys are going to have to perform if Montrell Johnson is not able to go.
Katie Daniels.
Katie Daniels is another one.
I heard on Saturday Katie Daniels was one of the main standout performers. What it sounds like is Katie Daniels can be potentially like a third down speed guy, like get a little crease is gone type of back. And boy, do they need that. With Trevor Etienne being gone, boy, do they need a guy that could maybe get a crease. And, you know, this has been talked about a little bit since the Johnson injury with tragic Montrell Johnson, not tragic, that's the wrong word, with unfortunate Montrell Johnson news to start the season comes great opportunity.
Yeah.
Trevor Etienne left a big void with a really, really strong 1-2 punch at running back last season. Man, how nice would it be if, you know, say Montrell doesn't play in the Miami game, Treyon Webb comes in and proves that he can be that guy. And now all of a sudden when Montrell does get back, you're like, man, we got a really, really nice 1-2 punch here. What if Jaden Baugh comes in? What if this is as good of an opportunity as ever for one of these guys to come in and prove that they belong to get a good portion of the snaps, even when Montrell does get back.
No, I agree. And you're right about that. But Florida needs to win that game.
They have to. Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, nobody's going to care. If Treyon Webb has 120 yards and a touchdown and Florida loses, 27-24, no one's going to care. They got to win that game. Now, if they win the game and a young running back produces, well, then you're got the best of both worlds.
Can I bring up something super interesting that Dylan Denmark brought up to me a couple after the Montrell injury that I had never thought about, but I think it's super interesting. Does this open up the door if again, we're just under the Montrell might play the Miami game, but just under the assumption that he's not, because we're just in this scenario right now. If he doesn't, does that open up the door for DJ Lagway to play more? Because he's going to have, I know he's a quarterback, obviously, but you assume that whatever package, whatever kind of leak Tebow sort of thing they're going to do with Lagway is going to be some type of run-heavy package, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some read option stuff, extra threat in the run game, make it a numbers problem for the defense, that kind of thing. without your starting tailback, what if it's the second, third quarter in that game and they're struggling to run the ball a bit? That when they're trying to run it up the gut with Webb and Daniels and Ball, they're getting 1 to 2 yards a carry, not really pushing the pie. They're not really doing much. What if Lagway comes in just for packages? I'm not saying he takes Mertz's job. That's not what I'm saying. What if he comes in a little bit extra to help present that problem and try to help getting the run game going a little bit?
I think you'll see DJ Lagway a little bit. I would have a little trepidation throwing a true freshman out there, opening day, true freshman year against the Miami Hurricanes, 90,000 people in the swamp.
With the understanding that he probably still wouldn't throw a single pass.
Right.
Just for that. I remember in 2019, that was a really good offense, but they struggled hard to run the ball that year.
Yeah.
The one time they would run it better was when Emory Jones would come in because he had that extra threat. And I didn't love them putting in Emory Jones at the time because they threw the ball so effectively. But I'm just saying, could that just be an extra wrinkle and maybe he gets a couple more snaps?
No, I wouldn't doubt that at all. I think you'll see packages for DJ Lagway, no question about it. Real quick, as we begin to wrap up, again, thank you to Southeast Orthopedic Specialist, George Moore Chevrolet, for bringing you Gator Bytes. Again, Southeast Orthopedic Specialist, they're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center. They provide an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations. You can see them in Jacksonville, St. Augustine, Riverside, Northside, Southside, Beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. They're all over the place. You can also listen to the good Dr. Kevin Murphy on Thursday mornings with Jeff and Dan on The Drill here on 1010XL. Southeast Orthopedic has been a big sponsor of this program for years, probably as long as this paper's been around, maybe longer than that. Southeast Ortho has been with us. And again, thank you to George Moore Chevrolet.
Dude, that paper is about as old as your little guy.
I think that's probably 5 or 6 years old. This is conservation of paper is what this is.
Isn't that insane?
It's a long, long standing piece of paper.
I'd never thought about that until Denny brought it up about a year ago. He's like, you have that same sheet of paper.
Literally, this paper's from like 2019, 2020. This might be pre-pandemic paper, ladies and gentlemen. But tell them about George Moore.
George Moore Chevrolet, fantastic. They've been here for forever for a reason. They're very, very successful because they do very, very good work. If you buy a car there, you're going to be happy. If you get service there, you're going to be happy. And they're great people, man. They're just really, really nice people to work with, friendly people to work with. It's a great experience all around, top to bottom. Let's wrap up with this. And again, we're back pretty much weekly now, obviously heading into the year. So this will be a weekly deal. Here on Gator Bytes, 1010XL.com, and the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Appreciate you guys being with us to kick off another season. You, Graham Marsh, are a proud alum of the University of Florida. I am that.
You got the orange and blue blood pumping through your veins all the way back to the WRUF days, and now you're with us here on 1010XL.
The Gator Vision days.
Gator Vision. You are a Gator through and through.
The alligator?
Yeah, independent alligator.
The independent
I like
Florida,
that.
absolutely.
So let me ask you this. Is it as simple as a Gator alum, such as yourself, a bowl appearance, Billy Napier is safe, a non-bowl appearance, Billy Napier is gone? Or is it more complicated than that?
It's more complicated than that. A different point in this offseason, I might have said it's that simple, but I think as things go on, I think I've heard multiple people say, and the more I hear people say it, I think I agree with it more. The reason it's more complicated is because I don't know that there's a certain record that he does or doesn't have to hit, like you're saying, because if they win 6 games and make a bowl, like, it's not necessarily that. It's more so, and you've heard this, I'm sure, it's more so how it looks. Games, because their schedule is really hard, as we all know, so they're going to lose football games. Like, breaking news, the Florida Gators are going to lose football games this season.
Yeah, they're not going 12-0.
I'm gonna just go ahead and just say that and proclaim it. They're going to lose games. Every game this season, they need to look competitive. That's step one. They can't. Georgia is probably going to beat them by double digits, but it can't be just a complete and utter embarrassment throughout the game. Like, Florida needs to have a couple of drives where they get on the field and score, and a couple of drives where they get an interception or get a nice stop. Like, there needs to be something like Texas game, same way. And then the other games at Tennessee, Miami, at Florida State to end the season, LSU, those types of games, the procedural and the functional stuff cannot be an issue. If that's an issue, it's over. Don't care. That stuff has to be done with. That's got to be a thing of the past. And then again, those games, even if they lose, those games have to come down to the wire. None of this stuff where Kentucky jams it down your throat all game and pretty much takes care of you. None of that. UCF can't. What's his name that was in Arkansas last year? KJ Jefferson. KJ Jefferson can't come back into the swamp and do what he did to you. It cannot happen. So procedurally, like functionally, I need a clean operation. I don't need Graham Mertz clapping his hands with 2 seconds left because I can't get the ball off. I don't need that. And then I also need these guys they've brought in. I need these transfer portal guys, and I need these highly touted recruits from the last like 2 seasons. I need to see them produce and show up and perform. I need to see them developing into really good college football players.
Let me ask you this. We got 60 seconds. I've been very vocal the entire offseason. And you're right to an extent. But in this scenario, I'll say that don't tell me how it looks. Don't tell me if it's good or bad. If I tell you right now, on August the 16th, that the Florida Gators will go 7-5 in 2024. You have no idea what it looks like, but you know they're going to be 7-5. Mm-hmm. Do you take that right now?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
100%. Not even
without a shadow of a doubt. Give me the contract.
Where do I sign?
Sign on the dotted line.
Sign, shake hands, let's call it a day.
Give me 7-5. Give me a bowl game on December the 27th, and I will tell you, if they go 7-5 and go to a bowl game on December 27th, 28th, whatever, it is my opinion Billy Napier should come back for year number 4.
I agree. What are you thinking? Bad Boy Mowers Bowl?
Whatever it is.
Gasparilla Bowl.
Send them back to the Birmingham Bowl, the Las Vegas Bowl, whatever. Give me 7-5 and a bowl game. I don't know how you fire Billy Napier with this schedule.
I think the tough number record-wise is going to be 6-6.
Yes.
That's going to be the gray area number because I would argue, I know I just said it's not this simple, but at the end of the day, it probably is going to be realistically. I would argue 5-7, there's almost no way that Billy Napier comes back for year 4. 7-5, there's almost no way he doesn't. 6-6 is the gray area where how it looks type of number, in my opinion. That's when you could be on the fence a little bit, and I think some will want to keep him, some will want him gone. It'll be a little bit of a divided thing.
He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. We're back weekly. Gator Bytes, 1010XL.com, the Florida Gator, 1010XL Facebook page. As always, thank you to Southeast Orthopedic Specialists and George Moore Chevrolet. We'll be back next week to preview Florida-Miami again and look ahead to the first Saturday of college football. Florida State, first game right out of the gate. August the 24th, high noon, the football hotbed of Dublin, Ireland, as they take on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Talk to you guys next week, right here on Gator Bytes.